Browns Blitz is brought to you by BigPlay.com and Cleveland Sports Talk. Now here are your hosts, Rod Bluhm and Sam Maddie.
And welcome to the Browns Blitz podcast. This is episode 3 on March 5th, 2019. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's Sam Maddie here with my co-host Rod Bluhm. Rod, how are you doing this week, and how's your week been so far?
Hey, Sam, I'm doing great. It's been a pretty good week. How about you? How you been doing?
It's been all right. A little bit of a fluctuation with weather. It's been really, really cold, but then tomorrow it's supposed to be like 61. So definitely got one of those sinus headaches from that just because of the change in temperature. But other than that, I can't complain. It's been busy but productive at the same time. So hope all's been going well with you, my friend.
Yeah, I'm ready for some warm weather. This cold stuff's kind of for the birds, you know.
It's just the back and forth, man. That's what's so annoying.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I think somebody said to me today it's time to kill the groundhog because I think they got it wrong this year.
Because, I mean, you're right. And I mean, there's some days that I'm like, well, I guess I could start mowing my yard or doing yard stuff. But then the next day it snows. So it's just stupid. So
it has been, definitely.
And it's like wearing clothes. You don't know whether, I might overdress and then I'm too hot. It's just, and, I sound like a girl saying that, but it is what it is. So anyway, it's been a busy week so far in football, with the combine and free agency approaching. So we've got a good show on hand. Rod, we got a special guest, a friend of mine, and I believe a friend of yours. His name is Mac Robinson. He actually attended the combine this weekend. So looking forward to diving in with him. A little bit about Mac. He is the executive producer at LC Captains Radio Network. He is a writer for us at BigPlay.com. He is the host and writer of Hurry Up Podcast and the Browns Wire Podcast. And I mean, this guy, he's top notch. I knew we needed to get him on the show, and he's got a lot of good information coming from this weekend in Indy. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. So, Mac, are you there, my friend?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm here. All
right. Well,
thanks for having me on.
Hey,
It's good to have you.
For sure. So go ahead, and I kind of elaborated a little bit about, what you're into. Tell us more about yourself. What kind of projects? I know you're a busy guy, so again, thanks for coming on. And I was afraid we weren't going to be able to, but yeah, go ahead and give us a little bit of an introduction, man.
Yeah, so basically I've been writing for BrownsWire.com since it's actually almost my 2-year anniversary over there. So I've been writing for them for 2 years now. I've been doing their podcast for them for almost a year at this point. But on top of that, I've also been working with allsportscleveland.com, obviously, like you mentioned, getting picked up at bigplay.com as well. Trying to keep busy, trying to make sure I have as little downtime as possible. But I had enough time to go out to the combine this year. That's my second time going out there as well, and being able to cover it. It was a fantastic time.
Great. Did you get to meet anybody famous? Did you see our John Dorsey or Freddie Kitchens there?
I didn't see them. So a couple funny stories for you. So going around Indy, there's normally a couple bars that people will go to. So we were going to go, and myself as well as Jared Mueller of the Orange and Brown Report, we were going to walk over and try to check it out. And we go over there. I almost literally bump into Steve Smith on the sidewalk. And then also, as we're walking up, to tell you the wait at this place, and you could tell that everybody was there. The wait was so large that Michael Irvin couldn't get a table. He was waiting for a while in the waiting room. So we knew if the playmaker isn't getting a table right away, we knew we're going to have some trouble. So at that point, we were like, okay, this is getting pretty serious.
Where was this place?
It was I believe it's Prime. I think that's the name of the bar in Indy. It's called Prime.
Okay, awesome. Well,
yeah.
Were you able to get in eventually?
No. We realized very quickly that we're like, okay, if we're gonna get in, we were wondering if we were going to get in before they decided to close. So we decided to, kind of bail that night. But overall, it was still a great time though.
Good.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's a fun time.
Yeah, well, hey, I was just gonna kind of get just in your general impression of the combine. We've been hearing about all these guys who, the risers and fallers at the combine. I know there's a few guys who were standouts, but who were the big standouts for you?
For me, going into it, I was really interested to see how Montez Sweat would actually perform, because when I was down at the Senior Bowl as well this year, and I was able to get a chance to see Montez perform, and he looked very good to me down there, and I was interested to see how he would test. And honestly, I mean, obviously you saw the 40 time, 4.41. So he was a huge standout. If anything, I think he solidified himself as a first round pick, but I really liked what I saw out of him. Obviously another Senior Bowl standout was Andy Isabella, the local Ohio kid from Mayfield Heights. I was able to talk to him a little bit down in Mobile, and he went out there, ran a 4.31. And mind you, I know a lot of people have talked about it before, but the fact that Andy actually raced against Denzel Ward in high school in the 100-meter dash, and at the same time, he still beats out Denzel in his 40-yard dash. So it was interesting to see that kind of dynamic play out. But between all of those guys, and then Quinnen Williams, my goodness. I mean, for a guy being 303 pounds, I have never seen a guy look so fluid out there in the field and in the drills. He looked fantastic. And also I did like Kalen Saunders as well. He's a defensive tackle out of Western Illinois. I really like him as well.
Anybody offensively stand out to you, Mac?
Offensively, I mean, the big name that everybody's going to point out is going to be DK Metcalf. I mean, let's be honest. It's the big name that everybody was looking towards, and running a 4.4 or a 4.33, excuse me. It was huge for him. My only question with DK was just how is he going to do when it comes to the agility drill? So the 3-cone, the 20-yard shuttle, and the numbers weren't necessarily great. Now, I'm not going to completely say like what some people are that completely is going to ruin him. But at the same time, I am going to be a little bit cautious about that, because you might get a guy, and I've heard comparisons that other people have made about him possibly being this generation's, oh my gosh, the name's escaping me now.
Kevin White.
No, I was going to say David
Boston. Yeah,
yes.
David Boston's name's come up.
Yes, I've seen him quite a bit. So that's the kind of comparisons that I saw, that maybe, I mean, the dude is jacked, but the question is, maybe is he too jacked? Maybe does he need to kind of take down that 1.8% body fat and maybe add on a little bit for him? But it's going to be interesting to see how it goes, though, going forward.
It makes you think too, like with him having such a low, body fat percentage, like, how, what is the likelihood of him just getting injured, tearing something that much easier or something like that. So, man, yeah, he looked like a freak. I remember when I saw the time, I just couldn't believe it. I'm sure, Rod, you were the same way. We kind of talked about it a little bit, man.
Yeah. Straight line speed is not an issue. Strength and all that stuff. It's we saw a lot of great performances there, but even looking at some of the mocks and that, I think people are still not agreeing on really where everybody lies at this point. So I think there's still a lot of things to shake out with this class at a lot of different positions. I don't think there's still not clear. There's still not clear cuts at most of the positions. It's kind of how it feels to me. Is that what's your thought on that, Mac?
Well, for me, I think that you're pretty spot on. That there's no clear cut performer that seems like is the clear cut pick for this team, and that's the one thing that I'm looking at, is that taking a look at some of these players, there's so many different options for this team, and I will say that when it comes to the way that this offseason is playing out in free agency and through the draft, the Cleveland Browns have a unique opportunity, because it seems like all of their bigger needs that they have, are going to be in line with what's available this offseason. Outside of maybe that number one receiver, which, I mean, look, there's not many of them in the NFL, but at the same time, when it comes to a pass rushing defensive tackle, there's plenty of those available on the free agent market and in the draft this year. And especially this defensive line draft is one of the deepest in years. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on, as well as the edge. So that's going to be interesting to see. And one more prospect that I wanted to get to real quick too is that I forgot to mention was Andre Dillard. Once again, he's another guy that I got to see at the Senior Bowl, and he looked phenomenal down there. I liked what I saw out of him, and then seeing the way that he was able to test, it really kind of backed it up, and I really like him as well.
Yeah, I heard some good things about him too. Maybe possibly getting him in the second round for Cleveland. So of those people that you mentioned, Mac, and other knowledge that you might have, which ones do you think of those players are standouts, or just not even standouts, or are the Browns looking at? Like, who are we targeting?
Well, from what I heard, one of the big focuses for Cleveland this offseason is going to be that front seven. So whether it be upgrading the two linebacking positions outside of Joe Schobert, I think that that's a definite possibility. I think that they might take a look at upgrading Emmanuel Ogbah, where, I mean, look, Emmanuel Ogbah, he's a great player, and I'm a big Emmanuel Ogbah fan, but at the same time, he's got a contract that's going to be coming up at the end of the year. So you got to worry about that, and you got to think, will they go ahead, maybe try to get an upgrade this year, and then they can try to move off of his contract. So that's a possibility for them as well. And I think that, especially like I mentioned, defensive line is so deep this year. I've been saying it. I think that if the only defensive tackle that you bring over from last year is going to be Larry Ogunjobi, I think that that's perfectly okay with me. And if you bring in 3 brand new ones, that's fine by me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty realistic. I think if they have another defensive tackle, I think it's likely to be Emmanuel Ogbah, a guy who plays some inside and some outside. I think they're going to be looking to pick up probably, like you said, probably 2 or 3 defensive tackles. So, I think the depth in this draft can really help a lot. So, with some of these guys, at least in our opinion, moving up and down based on the combine, how do you think this affects who could be there at 17 for the Browns? Just kind of in a vacuum right now before free agency, because it's obvious some of these guys have moved up. I think a lot of people think Montez Sweat's going to be gone at this point now, for example, and maybe some other guys have moved up and down. What are your thoughts as to some realistic options at 17, and or some guys that maybe we thought could have been there before that you think might definitely be gone at this point now?
Well, I mean, for me, I think that it's going to be interesting to see, because I think that for them, like I said, defensive tackle is a need. And I think that somebody like a Christian Wilkins is somebody who could be available for them, and I think would be a good fit, especially on that defensive line. And I know character-wise, seeing stuff from Jordan Reed, he's a writer as well. That's Jay Reed on NFL on Twitter. If you guys don't follow him already, you should. He went ahead and did his background work on him. He went ahead, had his degree done in 2.5 years, and then went ahead and got his master's in 4 years. And so combining that with the fact that he's a substitute teacher on the side, I mean, he's a great guy in the locker room. Now, some other guys possibly, I mean, offensive line-wise, like I mentioned, Andre Dillard possibly. And then some other guys that could be interesting as well. I've seen some other guys like Byron Murphy, who could be an option for them as well. And even in round 2, I've been talking to some people, and they were mentioning possibly Julian Love in round 2 as well as I'm not going to be able to pronounce his last name, but the cornerback out of Penn State, Amani.
Yeah, we know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Exactly. So he's somebody who could interest me possibly in round 2.
Interesting. Mac, let's jump right into the rumors. So let's talk about the rumors that you might have heard. But then let's also what do you think the overall impression of the Browns were? I saw a lot of players mention that they didn't mind or that they might want to play for the Browns. Like, what was your overall feel about the Browns? And then what other rumors did you might have heard just around for the league?
So for the Browns, it was generally positive, and especially I'll even combine with what I heard down in Mobile to what I heard in Indy, which is the fact that a lot of people are very high on Cleveland. They love the hires that they ended up making, and they love the direction that they're going. And I think you heard it, especially even like a prospect like Ed Oliver talked about possibly playing with Myles Garrett as well on that defensive line. And I think that he was talking about the fact that they'd be a great 1-2 punch, and good luck trying to keep your quarterback up. And I mean, I'm right there with them. But at the same time, like, I think that the overall impression has been pretty good for this team. And I think that everybody is in agreement that, look, they're heading in the right direction. And it seems like they're going to be very good very quickly.
Good.
I think definitely you could sign us up for that right now at Oliver. I think if he's earned 17, we'll take it.
Well, and I can even tell you, too, from what I heard, that if Ed Oliver has any kind of a slide, you best believe that John Dorsey will be all over that phone trying to jump up to get him, too. Because I know he's a big-time target for John Dorsey as well. And then, like I said, front seven is going to be a major focus by this front office this offseason. And now I know that John Dorsey had talked about that, look, we're a little bit away from free agent, or we're a little bit away from competing and everything like that. So I think he was trying to temper expectations. From what I heard the contrary, that it seems like John Dorsey understands that this isn't the typical 5-year window that you might get. Instead, you're taking a look at the fact that, look, everybody pretty much agrees that there will be a lockout in 2021 after the season. So the Cleveland Browns, they have a 2-year window. And at this point, you're looking at the fact that John Dorsey needs to, and I know I've been told that he's looking to, Incredible Hulk this rebuild to get them into a position where he needs a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. And so he's trying to see if he can speed this up as much as possible.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Anytime you see him talk, he's talking Super Bowl in his initial press conference, and that's what he's thinking. So I think that those comments at the beginning of the combine was kind of to try to lull a few people to sleep. So I think that's just how he operates, kind of keep everybody guessing. So let's talk a little bit about the players who were tagged, and of course this is disappointing because we've been waiting for weeks, and then these guys waiting on these players, hoping some of these guys would make free agency, and then of course everybody gets tagged at the last minute. So DeMarcus Lawrence, Frank Clark, Jadeveon Clowney, D Ford, Grady Jarrett, and I don't think we're too worried about Robbie Gould being tagged. But
hey, kickers need love too.
What's that?
Kickers need love too.
Yeah, especially in Cleveland, huh?
That's right.
Especially after last season, they had a little bit of a rough go of it last season.
Oh, come on now, Greg the Leg is still pretty good.
Yeah,
Greg the
we'll
Leg.
see. I think he's going to get some competition this season. Would be my thought, but
I think so too.
So I just kind of want to get thoughts on those guys. I'm sure Grady Jarrett's probably the biggest disappointment to both of you, but any surprises there otherwise?
I mean, for me, I wasn't really surprised by anybody. I was like you mentioned, I was disappointed that Grady Jarrett got franchised. I thought I had heard that he was going to stick in Atlanta, but at the same time, there was that still like little bit of me that's still going like, so you're saying there's a chance, like It's not done yet. You're giving me a little bit of hope. But he was that main guy that I would love to see next to Larry Ogunjobi. But at the same time, I think that Jadeveon Clowney, I expected. D Ford, I expected as well. DeMarcus Lawrence is an interesting situation to watch going forward, but Frank Clark kind of surprised me a little bit. I thought that if anybody was going to hit, I thought he would too. And I thought that he might be a possibility for Cleveland, but I'm interested to see how those kind of line up going forward. But at the same time, I think that, like I mentioned, this is a deep year in free agency and the draft. So it seems like there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Cleveland to get in there.
What about some guys maybe that weren't tagged, like Landon Collins? I think that was surprising to me. C.J. Mosley and Gostkowski. That's somebody that I was really excited to see wasn't tagged today because I'm interested in bringing him to Cleveland. I think he'd be great. So, but that's my opinion. Eric Weddle is going to be let go, and then Mark Barron from the Rams, he was cut too. So those were some late names that came out this afternoon. What do you think about those?
I mean, for me, I think the biggest one that I am hoping, and like you mentioned, Eric Weddle got cut, and just by seeing some of the moves that the Ravens are trying to make, I actually just saw a report from Pro Football Talk saying that the Ravens are trying to make a strong push for the Honey Badger, which I hope not. I hope not. He's actually one of my top guys that I kind of hope that they go for. But at the same time, C.J. Mosley is somebody that I really hope that they're able to bring in, especially given the fact that he put out a video a week or so ago, I want to say, about saying he could have been in Atlanta or he could have been in Alabama, he could have been in Miami, training anywhere, but no, he was in Baltimore working out. He said, "Go ahead, don't tag me, see what happens. Don't re-sign me, see what happens." And I think he's somebody who is a beast. And I would say bring him in and go ahead and let him take over for Jamie Collins' spot. Put him next to Joe Schobert. And I think you have a linebacking core that has to be feared.
I would agree with you. Yeah.
Any other takes on the free agency or tag players, guys?
I think free agent wise, there's a few different players that I also would like to see them bring in. I've mentioned him before possibly, but possibly you Trey Flowers, if you can jump in on that. He's somebody I like as well. Kind of having that flexibility to kind of go inside and outside a little bit. He's somebody I would like to see them bring in. A couple underrated names too. I would love to see, if they were able to bring in Jordan Hicks as well to kind of take over the weak side position. I would love to see that because I'm going to be honest, I would be perfectly okay if they moved on from Christian Kirksey. That's somebody that I think would be somebody that you can move on from. And I do think that he's a bit overrated. I do. But I think that he's somebody that you can replace as well.
Yeah, I think Kirksey's got one season left in Cleveland because he's owed like $7 million that would count against the cap if he gets cut, but you never know. I mean, they do have all that space, so they may make a move like that could cost them some money in order to improve the team. So we'll see, but I'm with you. There's the free agent linebacking group doesn't seem to have too awfully many strong guys, so I would love to see him go after the guys like that could really come in and make a difference.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
You guys, everybody's talking about wide receiver being a position that we need to fill either in free agency or in the draft. Let's just talk about free agency here since we've already touched on combine. From the both of you, and we'll start with Rod, who do you think would be a good fit out of free agency, wide receivers, a good fit for Cleveland?
Brashad Perryman. Well, I have to tell you guys, I've been hoping that they would just bring Higgins and Perryman back. If they don't bring Perryman back, I think Dorsey will draft a couple guys, probably in the latter rounds, 4th, 5th rounds, to come in and compete. I just don't see a big signing at wide receiver. I just don't see it happening.
Mac?
Yeah, I would tend to agree, honestly, because like I said, this free agent class and wide receiver, or this free agent class and draft class overall matched up really well with the Browns' needs. Wide receiver is not one of them in the free agent wise. So I think that there's not that kind of a guy other than Brashad Perriman. Like you mentioned, I love Rashard Higgins. I want him to stay. He has to stay.
Yeah.
But Brashad Perriman, the issue is we are in the same scenario that we were 2 years ago, which is the fact that, once again, Drew Rosenhaus is trying to take his player who had one good season and trying to make that into a huge deal. And I think that it's going to backfire again because I think that when it comes to Rashad Perriman, his best bet is even to take a Greg Robinson type deal, where it's a 1 year, decent amount of change, and then you can go in next year and prove it. Because look, people think that Rashad Perriman had a great year, and he did, but at the same time, he only had 16 catches. People forget that. And if you're trying to make at least like half, if you make half of your, how do I want to word this? Okay, so he had 16 catches, so he's basically looking at trying to make what, $2 million per catch? Like that's incredible to me. So
hashtag goals.
Yeah, right. So I mean, that's just it for me though. Is that I think if Perriman's asking for too much, then I say you got to walk away. You got to walk away.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, and that's a shame because players, it just seems like they want that money, and I understand, and I would want the money too. But it's he kind of rejuvenated his career in Cleveland and had a good story, and it's you kind of want to see him come back and kind of finish out that story and see his career kind of finish. But it's not worth the cost, not in my opinion, just like you guys say. So
that's the emotional and the fan side of it. That's why it's good that we have somebody like Dorsey in there to be smart and just make football decisions based on talent and money and keeping the right guys. So yeah, it'd be great to have him back, but they can replace him if they need to.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we are going to do address the Twitter questions that we have got from the Browns Blitz questionnaire this afternoon and earlier today. At VW Eric 23 asked, should we trade up in the draft to take Sweat? I think he would improve the pass rush opposite Garrett. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
Rod, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. I could see the Browns trading up in this draft. I don't know who they will target. I think it's going to matter. I think it's going to depend on who slides a little bit. I don't think Dorsey's going to trade much above, say, the 12 spot. And for me, that's kind of just a sweet spot because that's the Packers spot. And I think they might be willing to trade down. They could get to 12 by giving up a 3 and a 4 based on the chart that I've looked at. So if the right guy's there, I don't know if it would be Sweat or somebody else. I could see it happening because I don't think the Browns are. I don't think Dorsey wants to bring in 10 rookies, so I could see him using some picks to move around in this draft, definitely.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Now, when it comes to a specific prospect, I'm not sure if it would be Sweat or not, but I do think that, like I mentioned, there's going to be talent that ends up sliding down when you've got. It seems like there's only going to be a few quarterbacks. So basically what I heard in Indy is that it looks like Haskins and it looks like Murray, they're both locks for top 10 from what I had heard. But I think that it's going to be interesting too because, I mean, I've been saying that I feel like Drew Lock is going to be going to Denver. That's just what I had heard and what I had talked to some other people about as well. So I think that given the quarterbacks going high, I think that's good for Cleveland because you're gonna end up getting talented players that are gonna slide down. Right. I do think that Dorsey's gonna be able to kind of maneuver a little bit, like what Rod said. I don't think that they're gonna enter this year with 10 rookies. I think they're gonna have a good amount of turnover, but at the same time, I think that they're gonna try to go up if they have a need and if they feel like they need to get this player. Yeah, I think that Dorsey's gonna be willing to move up.
All right, and that's from Cleveland Eric 82. Another question that we have from Chilean Stud 11. What positions, if any, do you want filled with free agency and which positions through the draft? Like which positions need veteran leadership, depth, etc.? Mac, you can start this one out.
Okay. I would say through the draft, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but through the draft, I want to see wide receiver because I think that there's plenty of options. In that, I think that they can actually be able to have some guys that are going to be available a little bit later on that are still going to be very good. I think this is a very good wide receiver class for the depth. I think that while the top side of it might not necessarily be as great, I think that they're going to be able to have a little bit more depth in the mid rounds to where you can go ahead and address some of those positions. Now, defensive tackle, I touched on a little bit as well, where, I mean, I would dip into both for free agency and the draft, but edge rusher, I would tend to lean a little bit towards free agency because I do think that there's a little bit more talent over there. And then I would say cornerback, I would lean towards the draft a little bit more, possibly a veteran. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Also, maybe veterans for linebacker.
Right.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with Mac. I think, especially defensive tackle, I think I would like to see a veteran come in and also get somebody from the draft as well. There's some veterans out there that could come in and be in the rotation to help out, and also hopefully get a young stud defensive tackle and just fortify that defensive line. That's the way we want to build the team. That's the best way to really strengthen that defense. So go that route. Linebacker, great if they can get one of the top guys, super. If not, then they're going to have to address it through the draft most likely. Really, the other positions, I just want to see them bring in the best guys they can, whether it's through free agency or the draft.
To kind of create my own question, so for both of you, what do you think the Browns and John Dorsey is going to create the bigger splash in the draft or free agency? Like, which one are we going to go away from at the end of the day saying, God, I can't believe John Dorsey pulled all that off?
I mean, honestly, I think it's going to end up being free agency. I think that there's going to be, whether it be trades, along with some of the signings that he's going to be able to make, I think John Dorsey will be making a splash. And I think that at the end of the day, I think Browns fans are going to be very happy.
I'm going to have to agree with you because with the draft, it's not going to be apparent right away. I mean, let's face it, after last year's draft, I don't think a lot of us were even happy about it right away afterwards. So in this year, we don't have the capital that we had last year. So we're going to look at pick 17. We're either going to like it or not. And then we're looking at 49 or the possibility of trading up. So there might be a couple guys that the average person's heard of, and then the rest of them are going to be Dorsey picks that some of them are probably going to work out pretty well, but we're not going to know for a while. So my guess would be that free agency and trades is definitely going to be what people are going to point to.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Not only just because free agency is first, but it's going to kind of set the tone for the direction that the Browns need to go as far as the draft is concerned. So, and putting trades in there as well, it's going to be a really interesting month before the draft hits at the end of April. So we got a question from Brownie Boy 1920, and I'm sure that you all have both talked about this, discussed it, thought about it. Will the Browns trade Duke Johnson? I know that there's been some recent interest in him in the last 48 hours. So, Rod, start us off. What is your thought on Duke Johnson?
I really don't see a reason to trade him at this point, especially when you don't know the status of Kareem Hunt and when you're going to get him, how much you're going to get out of him this season, how many games. Why trade Duke Johnson for a 4th or 5th round pick? Now that could change if Dorsey goes out and signs another running back because he has a Duke Johnson trade in his back pocket. But to me, I just don't see it happening right now, at least not until they know the status of Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that I'm sorry, I was zoning out. I'm sorry. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Duke Johnson in regards to him,
Yes. Duke, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't understand why it's so difficult for us to not find a use for this guy. Like, because it seems like he's somebody who's always been explosive. He's always good with catching the ball. He's good with running routes. I don't understand why we would trade him. Now, do I think that we will? I think so, because I think that it seems like John Dorsey has been hellbound on trying to move Duke Johnson. But I think that he does end up getting moved. I don't think it'll be in the offseason, but I think that at some point Duke Johnson will be moved.
Man, Mac, you really came out swinging with that. I could feel the.
He was ready for that one.
Golly.
Not right away, but
yeah, it took me a little bit, but I got there.
Obviously, that's been a kind of a a touchy subject for Mac Robinson, everyone.
Hey, man, I love Duke Johnson. I just don't understand why we can't use him. I mean, I've been dealing with Hugh Jackson for the past 2 years, so yeah, he's kind of warmed me up to it.
I agree with you. It's almost like there's something behind the scenes, just something that we don't know, because he's been so good when he's touched the ball. He's talked about wanting to stay in Cleveland, finish his career here. He just comes across as a great team guy. And I know there's the nagging injuries from time to time and the not practicing and all that, but he just seems like a guy who wants to contribute, and it's hard for us on the outside to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Guys, we've got 2 more quick Twitter questions. The next one from Joker's Cuckoo, and I'll just kind of summarize. It's kind of a long one. She wants to know, what do you think the morale is of the Browns locker room and the organization at this point? A year after coming off of 0-16, going 7-8-1. How important is it, and how much of an impact on the team to perform together when the morale is up in positive opposed to negative?
I'll start. I think that overall, I think it's pretty good. I mean, I know just as we're recording this, I know that you've got Jarvis Landry openly throwing out there like, hey, come and ball with us. Like, you've got Demarius Randall low-key calling John Dorsey a genius. Even David Njoku's jumping in on it as well. So, I mean, I think that the overall locker room and the overall feel is pretty good. And not only that, too, if you're already getting prospects that are even saying, hey, you know what, I'd love to come out to Cleveland. I'd love to play in Cleveland. I think that that's something that really you can attest to the fact that, hey, this locker room is changing. People are talking positively about this team. And I think that overall, this team is in a good place.
Yeah, and I agree completely. I think the interesting thing to see will be when the team is together practicing and we see those first games and everything. How is the team? How are they interacting compared to what we under Freddie? How is that compared to what we saw under Greg Williams at the end of last season? Because this team really seemed together under Greg, and I know Freddie was there, but is it going to be the same? Is it going to be better? I have every reason to expect it's going to at least be as good as it was, but it could be a different dynamic. So we'll see when the team gets together.
Yeah, I think that's huge. The transition between, the coaching change, whether it not be much of a change, but seeing how that translates to the next year. We're all we were talking beforehand about there's something going on Brown's Twitter. Everybody's excited. Mac, you mentioned the players are excited. Jeff Myers, JW Myers _330 says to Benjamin Albright, what's going on in Cleveland? Players are tweeting like a big move is being made. According to Benjamin Albright, he thinks that they're just excited about the future and that us fans are just overreading it. So, again, that kind of answers our question. And, yeah, I think that's awesome that, Cleveland's just excited. It's a fantastic time to be a Browns fan, and the players are excited and looking forward to what the future has. So,
well, and I'll even remind you guys, too, because, I mean, I remember, so I was working at one of my other jobs last year, and I remember I was literally walking into the door at my other job, and I literally get a tweet update from Adam Schefter that Jarvis Landry all of a sudden is a Brown. Right. And then, as I'm working, then all of a sudden I'm getting, Demarius Randall is a Brown. And so I feel like we're coming up on free agency, so I feel like right now is where you're going to start to get into some of those trade talks, especially after the franchise tag. So this is where it's going to be like rowers meeting the road here. And I know we're not going to have free agency until next week, but that doesn't mean that John Dorsey is stopping at all.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember that after that Friday afternoon too. I was heading to the casino that night, and it was just I was supposed to drive a group of my friends, and I ended up saying somebody else needed to drive because I needed to be on my phone. So
yeah, I hear that.
I couldn't pass it up. All right, the last question is Drew Theron, and his question is next season a bust if the Browns don't make the playoffs?
I'll take that. I don't want to call it a bust. I think it depends on the record and how things go. A lot of things can happen during a football season. What I want to see is growth with this team. There's a possibility this team wins 9 or 10 games and doesn't make the playoffs some way. I'm not going to call that a bust. So let's just see what happens. We have to allow for the fact that there could be injuries. You just don't know what's going to happen in a football season. So I expect this team to continue to grow, and I expect them to make the playoffs, but you just don't know. And I'm not going to call it a bust.
I would agree with Rod on that one too, because look, I mean, it's all about growth. Whether or not wins come in, then that's a whole different story. Because look, if anything, we should have learned that when it came to the 0-16 season as well, where it's like you got to come in. Obviously, sometimes you might get the wins, you might not. You're hoping to get those wins, especially after the way that you ended last season. And it seems like that's how it's going to go with Baker Mayfield. But at the same time, you're just hoping to see that kind of constant growth. Are you better than you were from week 1 and week 17? That's what I'm looking forward to. So kind of taking it week by week and seeing where do we get better, where do we need to improve, and seeing how the team grows week by week.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Thank you all for posting your questions to us at the Browns Blitz. Mac, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. Thanks for taking the time out. I know that you are like you've shared with us, extremely busy. So, make sure to check out Mac Robinson at Mac Robinson Clee on Twitter. He puts out some great content. He's a part of some good podcasts. So definitely check him out. Mac, it's been a pleasure. Rod, any words for Mac in closing?
I just want to thank Mac for coming on. It's been a lot of fun talking about all this stuff, and I'm just excited about this week coming up and all the free agency and everything.
Hey man, thank you both for having me on, man. I'm the same as you, Rod. I'm ready to go. I'm excited. So
I can't wait.
I'm just as excited as these Browns guys that are talking about all this stuff. So I'm ready to go. Thursday can't come quick enough.
That's right.
That's right. It's a great time to be a Cleveland Browns fan for sure. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to follow us and the Browns Blitz podcast on Twitter, and we will catch you next Tuesday night. Thanks again for the support.